Okay, as we start to prepare thinking about carving our canoe, and here's the pattern for the canoe, and I'm going to, when this is all over, I'm going to send you, put the pattern on Wood Carving Illustrated. Mr. Boots allowed me to use the pattern as a way to help you beginners. And this is the pattern for it, but let me recommend one thing. Rick Boots puts out a book called How to Carve Wood, and if you don't have it in your library, get it, please. I want to tell you something. This man taught me so much. Years ago, a lot of you don't remember as young carvers, Rick was probably one of the first people to ever start a wood carving video series on PBS. And his videos are still in syndication, but they're very hard to get a hold of. If you ever get a chance, if you can find his videos, Rick carves just a ton of different subjects, Santa Clauses, animals, things like that. And it's probably one of the best video series ever made. But PBS put it out years ago. And I taped a lot of them on VHS, but unfortunately now VHS doesn't work too well anymore. But this is his pattern for the boat. And now, before you, of course this pattern was enlarged, but before you cut out your pattern for your boat, you need to do one thing. Now, in the picture, as we say, the figure is going to be carrying the boat by his hands up here. So, you won't, the boat is going to kind of fit like this, in other words. Fit up in his hands like that, in other words. So, naturally, you want the boat to be wide enough to fit in his hands up here, in between his hands. So, what you're going to do is you're going to take your figure and you're going to measure between your hands. Mine is measuring about 1 3/4. When I'm measuring between his hands here, they're about 1 3/4. Now, we may have to cut his hands a little bit to fit the boat in it and everything like that, but that doesn't matter. It's about 1 3/4 is what I'm measuring with the hands up like that. Okay. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to take the side view of the boat and you're going to cut it out first. And then I cut out the top view and I set it on the boat itself. Actually, here's the cutout of the boat. Okay? Excuse me. Now, what I did, actually this boat measures about, sorry, I'm trying to get everything here. This boat measures about 2 inches wide, right here. Okay? It measures about 2 inches wide, and I simply cut out the boat from the pattern like that. Okay? It's about 2 inches wide and about 8 inches long. So so when you pattern your boat, if you pattern it to the size of the figure, that's probably what it's going to be around. 8 inches by 2 inches. But it's only 1 3/4, but I'm going to cut it down. Then after I cut the side view out like this, I took the top view and I laid it on here like this, and I cut down through here. So, we've got this here. Okay, now, as you can see, the boat is carved out just like this. And it's going to fit somewhere in his hands like this. See that? So we're going to carve it to fit it that way. So in preparation, that's what it's going to be. So when I ended up, once again, I had 2 inches by 8 inches. And that is the preparation that you do for the boat. Now, as you can see on the pattern of the boat, what you can do is, you notice that the boat, it's the inside that we're going to have to scoop out right in here, in other words, on the canoe. After we get through shaping the outside, then we're going to have to shape the inside of. Now, what I would recommend, you don't have to do this, would be to take you a piece of well, actually, you can just basically draw it in there, just like that, in other words. It's going to go on the side, but I would do this after I got my carving done. But it's just going to be something similar to that, in other words. It doesn't have to be perfect, or whatever. But it's going to be something similar to that, in other words, that you're going to scoop out, that you're going to carve. And that is how we will prepare our canoe, or our boat, for carving, in other words. Now, like I said, what we're going to do is we're going to carve this out, and it's going to fit in the hands or in the arms just exactly like this, in other words. And we're going to carve a little oar to go with it, in other words. But I just sort of drew this out myself. You can, but what I thought I'd do is I'd go ahead and shape